What does this airplane, and even this airplane all have in common? This is going to be amazing. We're going to find out on Celebrating Aviation with Mike Machat. By request, special thanks to Yeti at Large 555 for suggesting the idea for this video. Well, these three diverse airplanes do have something in common, and it's not really good to answer a question with another question. But the Republic XF91, Douglas DC-4E, and Grumman XF-10F were all one-of-a-kind airplanes. And were they aviation flops, or were they critical stepping stones to success? Now, before we dive in and find out, I have a very exciting announcement. We are starting a new feature on the channel for the first time. We're going to offer you a chance to sign up for exclusive channel content that will be posted privately. I'd like to introduce my daughter, Melissa. Melissa is the inspiration behind this channel. She's my technical advisor, social media guru, and we're going to have a link in the title block that allows you to sign up for this new feature. There's no obligation. You can unsubscribe at any time, but you're going to see Melissa's name. She's the administrator of this new program. So we'll even allow you to vote for your favorite aviation topics. When you click on the link, you'll see my name and email. Just replace that with yours. And we'll keep you well informed of what's coming on the channel, but we're very excited. And now back to our program. This is the Grumman XF-10F Jaguar. This is the Grumman F-14 Tomcat. The Tomcat would not have been possible without the Jaguar, even though that airplane was deemed as not being successful. So we're going to talk about the evolution of aircraft design. I'm going to give you three quick examples just to illustrate how this works. The first is the Northrop Grumman B-21 Raider, and this airplane would simply not exist were it not for this airplane. This is the Northrop N1M, first flew in 1940, followed 2 years later by the Northrop N9M, the twin-engine, more advanced version. That led to the Mammoth XB-35 Flying Wing, the jet version, and ultimately the Northrop B-2 Spirit. I always point out that I think it's amazing that the B-2 and the Flying Wings had the identical wingspan, 172.0 feet. We're expecting the Northrop Grumman B-21 Raider to make its first flight this year. Very exciting time in Southern California aerospace. Second example is the Convair F-106, the ultimate interceptor. And this airplane wouldn't exist were it not for this airplane, the XF-92A. Very briefly, the XF-92A first flew in 1948, followed by the beginning of the production series, the YF-102 in 1953, the barrel fuselage YF-102A, and then the production version F-102A Delta Dagger, ultimately leading to the Convair F-106 Delta Dart, a Mach 2 airplane. Here you can see the beautiful Coke bottle fuselage and the elegant lines. This is, to this day, the fastest single-engine jet airplane ever flown, achieving a speed of Mach 2.41 during a world record attempt at Edwards Air Force Base in 1959. The ultimate interceptor, shown here firing a nuclear-tipped Douglas Genie missile. And finally, quick example of the light airplane industry. Same process. Here we have the Bamboo Bomber, as it was known, the Cessna T-50, or the Bobcat in military form. And that led to the Cessna 310B for you Sky King fans. Cessna Skyknight with the swept tail and the canted tip tanks. And ultimately the Cessna 421 Golden Eagle. But the first of our featured airplanes is the DC-4E, and I should mention that each one of these could literally have its own video with lots of good detail, but I wanted to give you an overview and make the point of how airplanes that are considered not successful in their time actually lead to families of airplanes and very, very successful machines. So here we go. This is Douglas's first airliner, the Cloudster. Airliners in the late 1920s included the all-metal Ford Trimotor, the biplane Curtiss Condor, and the wooden wing Fokker F-32. Now, here's your chance to win a bar bet. The F-32 was the first four-engine airliner flown in the United States. That always gets them. But because of the wooden wing, there were problems. There were a number of accidents. And so the need for an all-metal, low-wing, modern twin-engine airliner was paramount. And Boeing answered the call with the 247, Douglas with the DC-1. Production version became the DC-2, known as the Racer for its speed. The airplane that changed the world in 1935, the DC-3, 25 passengers, first airplane to make a profit carrying passengers only. However, those airplanes were quite short range, and so they couldn't compete with the flying boats that you see here, the Sikorsky S-42 at top, Martin M-130, and the Boeing 314. These were the airplanes that were flying passengers around the world. So there was a need for a land plane that could do that, and the answer was Douglas's first four-engine transport, shown here at Santa Monica in 1938, along with a DC-2 and DC-3, the DC-4E. The Douglas DC-4E, E for experimental, was developed for a 1935 United Airlines requirement to have a larger and more advanced replacement for the DC-3. Here's a very rare photo from the Douglas Library of the DC-4E's first flight over Santa Monica in June of 1938. The airplane's novel triple tail enabled the use of existing hangars and provided sufficient vertical fin area to allow safe flights with two engines out, even on the same side. The DC-4E was powered by four 1,450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2180 twin Hornet radial engines. Planned capacity was 42 passengers, nearly double that of the DC-3. It was the first large commercial airplane with a nose wheel, and other innovations included auxiliary power units, power-boosted flight controls, air conditioning, and even provisions for a pressurized passenger cabin. However, the DC-4E never entered production because, like too many prototype concepts of that era, it was just too much airplane too soon. In 1939, the airplane was painted in United Airlines markings and evaluated throughout that airline's route network. During the DC-4E's demonstration tour in Dayton, Ohio, Orville Wright was taken on a sightseeing flight over the city. Although the aircraft cruised at 200 miles per hour, its many complex systems proved to be expensive to maintain, and overall performance was below expectations. In late 1939, the airliner was sold to Imperial Japanese Airways and was dismantled for reverse engineering by Nakajima under order of the Imperial Japanese Navy. Many of the DC-4E's advanced design features were employed in the unsuccessful Nakajima G5N bomber. And to hide the airplane's dubious military connection, the Japanese press reported that the DC-4E had crashed in Tokyo Bay. The answer, however, was Boeing's 307 Stratoliner, and this was the first pressurized airliner. Douglas went on to develop the C-54 Skymaster, which began the entire fleet of Douglas airliners, the big four-engine Skyliners. We'll see those in a moment. But this airplane flew in 1942, and a year later, the Lockheed C-69 Constellation military transport was a pressurized airplane, and this also launched an entire family of fantastic Lockheed transports. But let's look at the Douglas lineage. The DC-4 Civvy version of the C-54 entered service right after World War II in 1946. Then the pressurized Douglas DC-6 followed. The DC-6B, considered by many to be the world's most successful piston-powered transport, referred to as the Thoroughbred. The longer range and larger Douglas DC-7 series, the DC-7B shown here. Little side note, this particular airplane is the very first airliner I ever flew on in 1961. And of course, the ultimate, the pinnacle of the four-engine piston-powered airliners, the DC-7C, named, little play on words, the 7 Cs, the world's first truly intercontinental piston-powered airliner. I should mention these and previous photos were taken by Douglas photographer Don Adams. And so that DC-4E, although not successful in its own right, begat an entire family of very famed and very successful Douglas airliners. Next up, the Republic XF-91 Thunderceptor. Republic started in World War II with the P-47, legendary Thunderbolt. Their first jet was the P-84 Thunderjet, flew in February of 1946. Now, this is really interesting. A lot of people think that the swept-wing Thunderstreak, or the YF-96 prototype, was Republic's first swept-wing airplane. But guess what? A year earlier, the XF-91 rolled out. This was Republic's first swept-wing airplane. What a quantum leap over the P-84. The XF-91 Thunderceptor was a jet and rocket-powered prototype developed by Republic, first flew in 1949 and became the first American fighter aircraft to exceed Mach 1 in level flight in 1951. As mentioned, it was Republic's first swept-wing airplane, and quite a leap over the straight-wing F-84. The XF-91's unique inverse taper wing was an attempt to address the problem of pitch-up that plagued early high-performance jet aircraft. This meant that instead of rapidly pitching up in a stall, the entire wing stalled smoothly, more like a straight-wing airplane. Additionally, the wing could vary its angle of incidence, tilting up for takeoff and landing, and then lowering its angle for high-speed flight. Republic test pilot Carl Bellinger made most of the XF-91's flight tests. With both jet and rocket power, the XF-91 could reach a top speed of Mach 1.7, but only with a 25-minute flight endurance, which was not enough to be an effective high-altitude interceptor. Its jet engine was the 6,000-pound thrust General Electric J-47 with a 4-barrel reaction motors XLR-11, the same rocket power plant as the supersonic Bell X-1 and Douglas D-558-2. Later aircraft, like the Convair F-102, powered by the Pratt & Whitney J-57, outperformed the XF-91 in speed, range, loiter time, and weaponry, as well as having the more advanced radar and fire control systems needed for night and all-weather operation. The second prototype encountered a ground accident. The tail caught fire and literally burned off, and so they tried a V-tail or butterfly tail configuration to explore how that would work in high-performance aircraft. But what the XF-91 did contribute to Republic's engineering experience was swept-wing technology, supersonic flight regimes, high-performance aircraft construction methodology, and the cantilever canopy design later used on the F-84F and RF-84F aircraft. In the final analysis, the Thunderceptor played a pivotal role in the company achieving its ultimate jet aircraft, the Mach 2 F-105 Thunder Chief. Here's what the airplane looks like today. It's currently in the collection of the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. And you'll notice that the nose looks different. It's fitted with a intercept radar, the same as the North American F-86D. And finally, the Grumman XF-10F Jaguar. Grumman's XF-10F was a prototype variable geometry wing fighter aircraft offered to the U.S. Navy in the early 1950s to try and solve the problems of integrating early jet airplanes with their marginal low-speed performance to the routine aircraft carrier operations of the time. Originally conceived as a swept-wing version of the F-9F Panther, which we'll see in a moment, the design was reconfigured with a T-tail and a high shoulder-mounted wing that can be moved to two positions, a 13.5-degree sweep for launch and landing, and a 42.5-degree sweep for high-speed flight. The single XF-10F first flew on May 19, 1952, and made 32 test flights that year. The airplane's delta-shaped horizontal stabilizer was aerodynamically controlled, which resulted in sluggish pitch control. This unpredictable behavior often resulted in pilot-induced oscillations, or PIOs, and the sudden and erratic deployment of leading-edge slats, causing the airplane to become nearly uncontrollable. The XF-10F's unique configuration presented many of the same handling problems as the earlier experimental Bell X-5, including that airplane's violent spin characteristics. The Jaguar's development was also hampered by its Westinghouse J40 turbojet, which was unreliable and made it underpowered and prone to engine problems. Although the X-10F was not armed, production aircraft would have had 20mm cannons. The Navy, however, was not encouraged, and the development of larger aircraft carriers, like the USS Forrestal seen here, with angled flight decks and steam catapults, made swing-wing naval fighters of that time period unnecessary. Hence, the Navy canceled the program in 1953, including 112 F-10F production aircraft on order. But let's look at the historic lineage of great Grumman airplanes, starting in World War II. The Wildcat, Hellcat, Bearcat, Panther, Cougar, and Tiger. Wait a minute, I have a better photo of the Tiger. Yeah, how's that? You didn't think I was going to do a video without a model box stop, did you? The F-11F was Grumman's first supersonic airplane, and here's a beautiful view of the Coke bottle fuselage, area rule. The airplane was used by the Blue Angels Naval Aerobatic Team for many years. I consider it personally the most beautiful of the airplanes they flew. So what was the F-10F's place in the lineage of Grumman airplanes? Well, it led to Grumman's partnering with General Dynamics in the development of the swing-wing F-111B, and ultimately the F-14 Tomcat. The F-105 would not have happened without the XF-91. The DC-7 series would not have happened without the DC-4E. So, the answer to the question, the XF-91, DC-4E, XF-10 were all pivotal airplanes and stepping stones to success. Ironically, the DC-4E was Douglas's first four-engine airliner, and the airplane at bottom is the DC-8, flown by NASA. That's a 72 series. It's about to be retired, but it is still flying today. All made possible by the DC-4E. So there you have it, a look at airplanes throughout history that were considered flops at the time, did not go into production, but led to some of the most successful airplanes ever flown. As always, special thanks to the great people and institutions that give us the images and make these presentations possible. So thank you for celebrating aviation with Mike Machat. I appreciate you watching the programs. They're a joy to bring to you. If you haven't subscribed, we'd love to have you on board, and please do hit the like button on the way out. It does help us with YouTube. Until next time, take care.